Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching The Wire Wrap. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta. It's been 100 days that the new Narendra Modi government has been in power. This week, the NDA government has completed 100 days. And in these 100 days, we have seen some new developments, some not so new developments. In terms of new developments, we've seen that the BJP-led NDA, in a departure from its behavior in the last 10 years, has presided over a series of rollbacks, if one could call that, whether it's lateral entry to government postings, sending the Waqf Amendment Bill to the JPC, bringing back the OPS in the form of the Unified Pension Scheme. But if things are somewhat similar to how they have been in the last 10 years. A signal to that effect was issued yesterday when the cabinet gave its approval to the recommendations of the Ram Nath Kovind report on the One Nation, One Election. To discuss all these developments and what it really means going forward, joining me today is Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. He's a senior journalist and he's observed Narendra Modi as well as the BJP for many decades now. And Ajoy Ashirwad, he's a political editor at The Wire. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, before we get into the 100 days of the Modi government, let's talk about what's happened yesterday, that is on Wednesday, when the cabinet gave its approval to the recommendations of the Ram Nath Kovind panel on One Nation, One Election. Just to tell our viewers, this panel had submitted its report back in March and it's an over 18,000 page report, and if you wish to read it, you can head over to the government website and read that whole report. And what the committee has suggested is that One Nation, One Election should be conducted, and it has suggested a series of changes for that, including constitutional amendments. Now, in order to bring these amendments, of course, the government needs the numbers in the Lok Sabha, and that could prove tricky given the fact that in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, the BJP has not done as well as it had expected and does not have the two-thirds majority that would perhaps be required for this. Nilanjan, coming to you first, your first takeaways from the One Nation, One Election approval that the cabinet has given yesterday. We do not have a timeline yet of when this rollout could happen, with Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav only saying that it will be done in this tenure of the NDA government, but there's no timeline as such. But how do you see this? Is it feasible? Is it practical? And will the NDA have the numbers to do this?
Before getting into all that, taking a more broader look at it, whenever there is any decision either of the government or of a political party, we journalists, we always look at why is it happening now. Now, the very fact that the decision of the Union Cabinet comes one day after whatever little celebrations were there on marking 100 days of the third tenure of Mr. Modi as Prime Minister, the government being in place. Why does it one day after that and not before that, so that this could have been very much part of the announcement and the package and the press conferences which were held by several cabinet ministers on that particular day. Obviously, my belief is that the decision to have the cabinet accept the high-powered Kovind committee's report is essentially to neutralize the general consensus among a fairly large section of people in the country on the occasion of 100 days that this government has not been able to establish either continuity or trying to be consensual or consultative, which is something which is absolutely required. Right at the beginning, when this government was formed, we said that this government is emphasizing continuity by having a large number of ministers holding the same charge along with the Prime Minister. But the fact is that if this government has to run properly, then it has to be much more consultative than is the second nature of Mr. Modi. Obviously, this has not happened. You mentioned the rollbacks. We can actually list out many more decisions where they have been taken and they had to be rolled back. My understanding is that this has been taken to counter the viewpoint which had set in that this government is unable to actually do what it is supposed to do. So it is actually, on some kind of, a trial period, and that it is not a very shaky and stable coalition. So how do they actually send the message? They get the Union Cabinet to accept a report which is on a contentious subject on which there are lots of division between various political parties. So it conveys the sense that this government is actually consultative. It is able to take a union cabinet accepts a particular decision which is now going to be steamrolled further. That is something which is going to be there. And also that while it is being consultative, the BJP is not diluting any of its continuity, because one nation, one election has been Mr. Modi's own theme right from 2016 onward, when he first gave that speech to his party office bearers in March 2016. Prior to that, Mr. Advani, when he was the Deputy Prime Minister in 99-2000, at that point he mooted the idea of one nation, one election. So, however much Mr. Modi wants to project it as his original idea, it is not. It's been talked about right from 1983, the report which was presented by the then Chief Election Commissioner R.K. Trivedi. So, from that time onwards, it has been there. So, it's very much part of the attempt on part of the government to say that Mr. Modi continues to be the boss, he is not diluting his ideological agreement, and he is able to bring along all the coalition partners on something which is a contentious subject, of course. Now, having said that, whenever one tries to sell anything, it's a very standard thing. You hear these advertisements all the time. Please read the fine print conditions apply, or fine print very carefully. What is the fine print? The Telugu Desam leader in Lok Sabha, he said yesterday to some journalists that we support this in principle, but there must be debate. Now, when he calls for debate, that means the decision of the Union Cabinet is prior to debate taking place at all the levels he's talking about. He's saying that the debate must go on at the booth level, at the Gram Panchayat level. So everybody should be connected. You obviously cannot have a debate and discussion, within 2 days or 3 days. So a lot more has to be done. Also, the fact that the main argument of the government right from the beginning has been that cost is going to come down very heavily. So, the Telugu Desam says we would like actually some evidence to figure out how the cost is going to come up. And also, what is understood very casually by people that one nation, one election, it is not like that. It's a fairly complicated process. The recommendations itself says that after the last Lok Sabha elections, on the first session, on the first day of the first session, the it will be decided that this Lok Sabha is going to be the starting point. So 24 is obviously not going to be the starting point of one nation, one election. Earliest it can be is 29. Prior to that, you have to get constitution amendment bills passed, for which you require a two-third majority in Lok Sabha as well as in Rajya Sabha.
Yeah, so just before we get into whether the BJP has the numbers and in terms of support from its allies, the TDP, of course, as you were mentioning, has said that they support this principle of one nation, one election, but they want a more consultative approach. A similar statement has been made by the JDU as well yesterday. The JDU has said that we earlier to the committee as well, we had given our support, so it's not that we are against this. But the point is that yesterday when Ashwini Vaishnav was addressing the media, he said that consultations will continue to take place before we bring in anything. But the fact is that this has been there, this committee has been there for over a year. 2023 September, I believe it was it was formed till it gave its report in March. So and it has consulted over 21,000 suggestions. It received 47 political parties given their suggestions. They consulted civil society groups, lawyers. So extensive consultations have already taken place. Now the government is saying that further consultations are required. When Ashwini Vaishnav was asked about it, he did not give any proper answer about what does he mean by further consultation. So what really is the government trying to get at, Ajoy, in your opinion, by saying that further consultation is required? Does it mean that it needs to get its allies on board further, or what kind of consultations are required now? Because if everything is already decided and the implementation group is going to be formed, so what other consultation does it need to do?
Yeah, frankly, Sravasti, I heard Ashwini Vaishnav yesterday, and he sounded very confused because he also said that over 80% of the respondents that the government spoke with favored the idea of one nation, one election. So, which means that there was already some sort of consultative process which we don't know much about, and the committee will be in a better place to inform us more about that. But what I see, as Nilanjan also pointed out, we need to see this Modi government has been all about messaging and signaling ever since it came to power in 2014, and now when the Modi government is short of majority in the parliament and is extremely dependent on its two important allies. So he and ever since he came to power with a short with without a majority, he has been trying to kind of signal that nothing has changed, and he has always tried to kind of, if for every speech and every decision that he has made, and even the constitution of the cabinet, he has tried to show that this nothing has changed and everything will his policies and his politics will continue. While he's tried to project that, he has not been able to kind of have that same kind of independence in his third term, because and he has been forced into some sort of consensus building, which has been the hallmark of Indian democracy and various governments. So he is in the third term, he is constantly, I feel that he is coming to terms with the fact that he is no more full majority government. So and he's sounding desperate, according to me, sometimes, while trying to, okay, we are talking about national security, one nation, one election, and these kind of radical ideas which have the potential to kind of make good narratives, but actually no implementation. Before the elections, we saw that he had so many interviews he get, of course all of them were scripted, but he announced that he had 100 days program, he had a 125 days program for the youth, and nothing of those, and 100 days has already passed, but have already passed, but nothing of those kind of announcements have come into picture. Rather, he's trying to fall back into different sorts of narratives, which is not clear, according to me. At one stage, the BJP seems like falling back into or resorting to Hindutva as a strategy for political consolidation, and at and the government level, he is trying to kind of he is forced into some sort of consensus building. So one nation, one election is also like, but it what does it depict actually? It depicts, government says that it will seriously bring down the cost of elections, and number two, it says that it will not distract various governments into electioneering mode frequently. But we have, when it was last year when it was announced and we were all debating this idea, many experts pointed out that it will save the election commission or the Indian government around 1800 crores rupees only, not more than that. And if you have one nation, one election, when the infrastructure projects which Amit Shah recently announced run into lakhs and lakhs of crores, so there is a choice between saving 1800 crores or saving the spirit of Indian democracy, which one nation or one election seems to kind of subvert. What what state elections mean actually at a different time? We could ideally debate all of these things, but generally over the last few 10 or 20 years, we have seen that when there is a mandate for the national government, state elections have also proven to be important instruments for the public to impose checks and balances. So if there's a center which the public people in Tamil Nadu feel has not done good for the state, there will be a mandate by these regional identities, autonomous state governments, to impose and reinforce whatever the constitutional federal structure, with all its limitations, of course. So this BJP has always tried to homogenize everything, homogenize, and like it doesn't respect India's diversity, as we know. and it has always tried to create a larger Indian identity, which is largely a majoritarian Hindu identity. So in these circumstances, state elections, I feel, have registered their presence as important checks and balances to the larger central government. So within this whole ideological structure of BJP, I feel one nation, one election is kind of trying to subvert many issues that people have expressed or articulated differently other than BJP, and it subverts the diversity of Indian polity and Indian democracy, and at the same time Modi's whole larger Hindutva agenda, it tries to kind of again reinforce. So this is how I feel about one nation, one
I
election.
think a similar point regarding this was raised by RGD MP Manoj Jha yesterday when he was talking about this. He said that, of course, we had one nation, one election just after India got independence up till 1967. And but then it was found that many states were having elections 2-3 times in a period of 5 years, and then it was decided to be done away with. And of course, there is the concern of federalism, as Ajoy was just pointing out, which has also been raised by several opposition parties. But the fact is that in order to roll this out, the BJP, of course, needs consensus and support from its allies. And just to bring this home, of the 47 parties, 15 of course opposed it, but all the remaining ones, they are very small parties. They may be NDA constituents, but they're very small parties. How much presence will they perhaps have in the Lok Sabha to get these constitutional amendments passed? And it's important to discuss this because in order, as the committee has recommended, in order to conduct simultaneous elections to municipal and panchayat bodies along with the Lok Sabha and state assemblies, the committee has recommended the introduction of Article 324A in the Constitution and an amendment in Article 325 for enabling a single electoral roll and single electors' photo identity cards, which will be prepared by the Election Commission on consultation with the State Election Commission, which will substitute any other electoral roll. Now, this will require ratification by the states with a 1/3 majority, but that implementation of simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and state assemblies will not. So, either way, there's a huge changes that are required in the constitution, constitutional amendments, which will require first a 2/3 majority, and for these electoral rolls, a ratification by states. So, is this practically possible for the BJP to get done?
Before actually getting into whether it's practical or not, there's one, grave untruth which has been constantly presented by everybody, right from Mr. Modi, even before that, Mr. Advani, that till 1967, everything was hunky dory. We were a perfect one nation, one elections, everything were being held simultaneously. It was not so simple, it didn't happen that way. Even before 67, there were states, most importantly Kerala and Odisha, where assembly elections were held out of sync of the Lok Sabha elections. Things are fine in the first decade, you can actually say, more or less it was fine in the first decade. But after that, as politics became more contested and as other political parties besides the Congress also started gaining strength in various states as it started happening, you had diverse, different elections happening at the different times. 67, of course, was the watershed because of two things. One is that 67, for the first time, it kind of gave a fragmented mandate. The numbers which were there with the Congress, it came down very sharply. In several states which were held along with the 67 elections, the Congress did not get a majority. No other party got majorities. Hung assemblies were there. So, which led to the first real large scale era of coalition governments across different states, which didn't last a full tenure. The second thing which happened in 1970, Indira Gandhi decided to have a midterm poll basically to consolidate her position within the Congress party and also within the country. She did it magnificently in the elections and in the 71 elections, that's well known. But that completely changed the electoral calendar of the country. It worked quite well because, as Ajoy was rightly saying, that checks and balances are required in the legislative system. When the Constituent Assembly was debating the need for Rajya Sabha? Is there any real need for it? After all, there are a large number of democracies in the world which are unicameral. Why do we need a bicameral legislature? Also, in various states, you have legislative councils in several states, not in all, which I think is a something an imperfection. There should be actually a debate that every state should be bicameral because democracy needs to become more representative. So checks and balances are required and corrective verdicts are required. Let's go back to 1984. We had possibly the most emotionally charged Lok Sabha elections in 84 when Indira Gandhi was assassinated, followed by a huge amount of a massive pogrom against the Sikhs in Delhi and in several other towns of the country, as varied as Bokaro in what is today's Jharkhand, in Kanpur, Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. You had in places like Indore, everywhere, you had large scale of rioting against the Sikhs. It was a nation which was, very badly fragmented. So the vote which was there was an, excessively emotional vote. The Congress won more than 400 seats. 414 was, I think, the exact tally of the Congress. Then at that time, if you had simultaneous elections, what would have been the verdict across the country? There would have been a complete, sweep by the Congress at the state center and in every state. What happened to the narrative of the Rajiv Gandhi government? It started, you know, collapsing. The downfall began right from 1987 onwards. Even in late 1986, Vishwanath Pratap Singh started creating problems within the Congress, despite the number of accords which Rajiv Gandhi went in 1985, signing in Assam, Punjab, various accords were signed. Despite that, so the assembly elections which happened between the 84 and the 89 Lok Sabha elections gave opportunity to the Rajiv Gandhi government to make amends, to change its style of functioning, to become more transparent, to ensure that corruption, which was actually emerging as a major issue, were taken care of. It's a different thing that he failed to do that, as a result of which the Congress was, reduced to half in the 1989 Lok Sabha elections, and we saw the first, the coalition government set up by VP Singh. So those kind of corrective opportunities should be there with the electorate. We have to understand that at times elections become very emotional where the electorate is unable to take a very rational choice. That is why it is very necessary to de-link. The second issue on which I feel very strongly is that any country, any political party where they argue that elections are bad because it kind of is a distraction for governance. I think the basic purpose of a democracy is getting undermined by this. The entire process is dependent on the impartiality of our electoral process. And you cannot say that this most important exercise, which enables the people of the country to choose who are going to govern them, is actually a cause of distraction for what, at the end of the election purpose, the people are to be elected. Do that is what they're doing. Priority is not on governance. I'm sorry, I'm saying something fairly contentious, but to allow the people to decide who will be presiding on the governance system. That is more important. If the people make a wrong choice, they should get opportunities to correct it. That's always happened.
Before we
It's also an opportunity for the government to correct
Yes,
itself.
of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
because it's the job of the government to sense what the public is and act according to that. Yeah.
And the fact is that as opposition, many opposition leaders are also pointing out, and former election commissioners are also saying that if the government really wanted to bring it out, then it could have conducted these elections, which are happening right now. Haryana, Maharashtra is supposed to be taking place in November. Even these elections are not being held at the same time. Yet you are announcing one nation, one election in the coming future. We don't know when it is going to be. So returning to my original
No, I'll
question
just interrupt
on that.
on this example you're giving of now, pushing back In fact, the story actually where they could have established the BJP's commitment, BJP's and Mr. Modi's commitment to one nation, one election, simultaneous elections. Let's go back to what happened in 2017. 17 and 18. In 2012 and prior to that in 2007, simultaneous elections were held in Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh. 2017, suddenly we saw that the Gujarat election was dealing from Himachal Pradesh. The Gujarat elections was held in November and results were announced in the early part of December. I think it was the 4th or the 5th of December when the results came out from Gujarat. The first election in which the BJP failed to get, cross 100 seats. Very important election. So that was dealing from Himachal Pradesh, where their own assessment was that things were even worse, so they did not want to club together Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh. So Himachal was held in early 2018,
Yes.
February or late January, early February. That is the time when elections were held. It obviously showed that they were not very committed to the idea of having simultaneous elections. If they were, they should have. Then they had another opportunity in 2022 and 23 to bring the two elections together, but they did not do that. So where are we saying, that they are actually committed? It's just to use the phrase popularized by Mr. Amit Shah that even one nation, one election is nothing but a jumla to follow.
And in fact, just this month marks 1 year of when the Women's Reservation Bill was announced in the new parliament, and we still don't know when that's going to be rolled out. The Lok Sabha election has already happened. Yesterday, the first phase of the Jammu and Kashmir elections has happened. Haryana is due in a couple of weeks, and then after that Maharashtra, but we don't know when those implementations would take place. But Ajoy, just to take off from what Nilanjan was saying, is it practically possible? Does the BJP have the numbers to do so, and moreover, does it want to do so? Because it has segregated these elections, as he was just pointed out, for political reasons. Clearly, even the Maharashtra elections, which were supposed to be announced and held at the same time, has still not been announced. They're likely to be announced, but still not been announced. They want to give the BJP a little bit of room to maneuver where there is a
Time
chance
for the second installment of that Ladli scheme.
Yeah. So is it practically possible, and is it going to happen at all?
Practically, of course, those amendments are required, but before these amendments could be passed with a two-thirds majority, the BJP, the central government will have to bring on boards all the opposition governments in states. So there are a lot of problems. What the government should have itself clarified that how it can be done. It's just not amendment, but bringing, and it has to initiate a democratic dialogue with if all governments barring TDP and Odisha, which already has simultaneous polls, the other, whether there are elections in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh just before parliamentary elections. So, and which means like if simultaneous elections happens at some stage, so these elections, the state governments of these three states would have served only 3 or 4 months before kind of giving up on the remaining term for the implementation of one nation, one election.
Yes, just to
Will those
interrupt you there,
governments? Yeah.
if it is the notification comes in the winter session,
Yes.
then about 17 states assemblies will be cut short.
Yes, that is what the Kovind panel has recommended, that they will have to be brought on board so that these state governments will have to voluntarily exit from or give up on the remainder of their terms, which could be anywhere between 3 to 4 years or even 2 years, in which and for them to do so, it will require a lot of consensus building in their own states, even if they want to implement these things, because it has to involve the public. For example, if I in Tamil Nadu have voted for the DMK government on for the set of promises that it has made, and I would like to, as a voter, I would like the DMK government to implement all those promises in the 5 years. And if the DMK government kind of tries and gets on board with the center to implement one nation, one election, it will also be kind of breaking the promise of a lot of its own voters who would be expecting certain set of implementation of their regional concerns. So that is the primary trouble, and it would require much more than constitutional amendment. And I feel that it would create a lot of chaos across states, because people will feel betrayed in many of these states if one nation, one election will be. And that is what I, when you as a reporter, when I speak to people, general people in Tamil Nadu or in or in Karnataka, they say that this should not be done. They clearly they make a point, like even a person who doesn't follow news, their natural response has been, at least in my experience, that this should not be done, because their relationship with their state government is much more closer than their relationship with the central government. This is how the voters, according to my experience, I feel. So, but there are many other problems. Like, I feel it's still a slogan, and I have no reasons to believe that it will be implemented in any time in the near future. It is yet another kind of attempt by the Narendra Modi government to kind of brush under the carpet many important issues, which people have been kind of demanding. The mandate has been, Modi's mandate was reduced on a certain set of complaints against the Modi last government, which is the job crisis, which is price rise. There's so much of corruption at the local level, and people are like generally now have a sense that these are all merely slogans that Mr. Modi is kind of always throwing at us, and actually there's no work being done apart from this large infrastructure development, which are kind of benefiting only the big companies. So there is a very concrete sense of failures of the Modi government, and he is no more. And Mr. Modi, I believe that given his conduct over the last 10 years, that he understands people's mood, and he understands that he's no more that kind of vote catcher that he used to be in 2014 or 2019. And with all these kind of things, he's trying to kind of, it's one of these psychological operations that BJP does on the minds of people to kind of forget about these things. But and I feel really kind of uh, uh, what disturbed by the fact that the Prime Minister can think of the mandate not as a corrective verdict, but again yet another opportunity to kind of ramp up the Hindutva agenda, its polarizing agenda, and kind of give these kind of slogans. Where you were talking about women's reservation bill, what did Mr. Amit Shah say when the women's reservation bill was passed? That immediately after Mr. Modi is elected for the third term, we will start the census process, which has been delayed. And once the census process is done, I think the delimitation would be done, and we'll immediately, where are those issues gone? Why has yesterday Mr. Amit Shah did a press conference day before yesterday to again show that what were the things done in the 100 days of Modi 3.0 government. But he did not talk about women's reservation bill. He did not talk about the census. He does not, if a government does not have a detailed data about people, how is it likely to have a pro people governance? So priorities are completely misplaced, I think.
So, since we were talking about the 100 days of the Modi government, and Ajoy was just raking that up, so just to tell our viewers that in these 100 days, we have, of course, seen a different Narendra Modi than we saw in the last 10 years in terms of these rollbacks that we saw, whether it is the advertisement for 45 postings in central government jobs in lateral entries that was withdrawn because it was said after there was widespread opposition to it that these posts do not have reservations for SCs and STs. The BJP decided to withdraw that, with union ministers saying that Prime Minister is committed to the welfare of SC, STs and OBCs and reservations, and therefore it was put on hold. The Waqf Amendment Bill, which was also seen as a core move by the BJP to woo its voter base. That was also sent to a JPC at the introduction stage itself. Then we saw the unified pension scheme that was brought out, which kind of combines the old pension scheme and the new pension scheme. And these developments that have happened in the last 100 days is a departure from the Modi government that we have seen in the 10 years. But to your mind, what are the big takeaways for this Modi government that you see in the last 100 days?
I think the biggest one is that Mr. Modi continues to be in denial about the verdict. That to me is the biggest takeaway. Because any prime minister who refuses to acknowledge the sharp more than 20% decline in terms of the number of seats of his own party from 303 down to 240, loss of 63 seats. No attempt yet from the BJP within its own organization to try to dissect, to try to analyze the reasons for such a sharp fall. This party has not even held a meeting of its very important, organizational platform, which is the parliamentary board. Technically speaking, Mr. Modi has not yet been elected by the BJP parliamentary party as its own leader. It was straight away short circuited, and uh, he was elected by the NDA parliamentary party. Now, in pure legal and constitutional terms, there is nothing called the parliamentary party of a coalition. There has to be a parliamentary party of a political party. Where has that been? So obviously, it means that there are a lot of issues within the BJP, within what we call the Sangh Parivar, which have come to fore by at least 4 occasions in which the Sarsanchalak of the RSS has said certain statements very offensive personally towards Mr. Modi without actually taking his name, but leaving no doubt as to who he had in mind when he was talking about somebody who should be the true sevak of the country, somebody who imagines oneself as God, uh, being considered by people as God, those kind of elements, and the fact that elections are not to be treated as a war. It is not a battle for, to do or die. It is something which you have to consider your adversary as, pratipaksh. That is the exact word which Mr. Mohan Bhagwat used, not as dushman, not as an enemy of the people. So there are a lot of corrective measures which needed to be taken. Mr. Modi's basic problem is that if you actually look at it, in October he will complete 23 years of holding of holding some kind of a constitutional position. That is first in the state as chief minister and then from 2014 onward as the prime minister. Now, prior to the 4th of June 2024, all the time he had a more than 50% legislative majority of his own. So this is the first time that he's facing something which is never handled in the past. He is not uh, you know displayed any skills in the period that he has been in these positions to be able to take decisions by a consultative process. Even this particular one nation one election, as we were pointing out, despite the government claiming that it has been unanimously accepted the Kovind committee, you have the coalition partners who are saying that more debate and discussion is required. So this is very politely saying that you have your word, we will have our word. You have today the control of the publicity machinery, which is through the information and broadcasting ministry, which is held by one of the loyalists of Mr. Modi. We will use our platforms, which is whenever journalists come, we will talk, and express our view.
And that's also come to the fore in the last 100 days, whether we have seen allies, whether it's Chirag Paswan, who came out vociferously against lateral entry and in fact ensured the climb down by the government, if you could call it that. His union minister categorically speaking against it, and just days after that it was rolled back. And the JDU as well speaking against the Waqf amendment bill, the TDP saying in parliament that we support it but we want it to be sent to the JPC. So Ajoy, to you, what have been the big takeaways of these last 100 days, and what can we expect going forward?
What how Nilanjan also said that he has been in denial, Mr. Prime Minister, but for the first time he is kind of experiencing the coalition dynamics where even your own allies can put pressure on you. Earlier the NDA, the coalition that he's leading, he already enjoyed a majority. Even in Gujarat when he was the chief minister, he always enjoyed the majority. The 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 NDA that was formed under Modi's leadership were all generally small parties which could be dispensed with and brought in again as a matter of convenience. This is not the case with Modi 3.0 government, where JDU, TDP, these are important players who have to kind of, and so that is why I said that he has been forced into consensus building, but which he is refusing to acknowledge. I would ideally like a prime minister who respects these coalition dynamics rather than constantly projecting itself as someone who can take all the decisions. I think finally the democratic checks and balances is catching up on Mr. Modi, and which is not necessarily a bad thing for Mr. Modi also, because great in a country as diverse as India, any kind of he has been constantly trying to homogenize and have like kind of reinforces centralizing impulses in all aspects of public life and governance, and which the mandate in 2024 was actually in one way a response to Mr. Modi to kind of uh, do some kind of course correction. And I think if he respects that, he would come across as a better leader rather than kind of emphasize and re-emphasize that nothing has changed and I am still the same Hindu nationalist person who can transform the person. The language doesn't seem to change at all. Yesterday, even Mr. Amit Shah, what did he say in the press conference? He said that okay, पहले भारत की रीढ़ की हड्डी नहीं थी फॉरेन पॉलिसी में, और and reed ki haddi means spine, and now India has reed ki haddi wala foreign policy. So the language and the semantics doesn't seem to change at all. It's like it's you're still the 100 days. What do we? Apart from he's been forced into, he has tried to go back to his kind of authoritarian impulses, and I see as a reporter, generally all these fringe organizations, VHP, Bajrang Dal have become suddenly very active. After the Ram Mandir movement, we did not see so many number of small skirmishes between Hindu and Muslim or lynching. We are seeing that all these lynchings have suddenly come back into our public sphere. We have seen unnecessary communal controversies being created in Shimla, in Haryana, cow vigilante groups, in Odisha, where which if the BJP came after 23 years, and suddenly there's like a mushrooming of cow vigilante groups across. And yesterday, Odisha had never seen such a news where people in a engineering college were suspended for cooking beef. These were not issues in Odisha. For those who know Odisha, these were not issues in Odisha because Muslims make up only 2% and they're concentrated in few pockets. But these communal issues, this polarizing trends in politics, which Mr. Modi kind of strengthened and is I think is seeking to re-strengthen that. The only thing I feel, rather than correcting his course, he feels more confident about his politics of polarization, and the BJP under him seems to realize that they have no other strategy to fall back on apart from Hindutva and the strategy of consolidating Hindus by keeping Muslims as or minorities as an enemy group all the time and projecting themselves as an enemy group. I think we have to see how these whole thing pans out, but the mandate against him and was uh, uh, if Ram Mandir could not win him a majority, I don't feel people of India will kind of appreciate these tendencies in their own public life, because people's lives are getting, when they are feeling squeezed, economically squeezed, these kind of tendencies can at best be some kind of temporary distraction, but not a permanent solution to Mr. Modi's failures.
And these issues will, of course, once again come up in the coming weeks, because we have elections in Haryana, as we mentioned earlier, where unemployment is a big issue. Agniveer's scheme is a big issue. That was also one of the issues in the Lok Sabha elections, and one of the reasons that the BJP did not do so well in Haryana, in fact, in comparison to 2019. And going ahead in Maharashtra also, the BJP has not performed as well as it wanted to in the 2024 elections, and we don't know yet when those elections will take place. But in Delhi, the Aam Aadmi Party government and Arvind Kejriwal wants elections to take place in November itself. Those elections are scheduled for February, of course, but Arvind Kejriwal is no longer the Chief Minister of Delhi. He has resigned, and he has decided that he will go back to the people and seek their mandate in a referendum of sorts. And this he has announced just 2-3 days after he was given bail by the Supreme Court, and he has resigned from his post, and we are going to see a new chief minister in the form of Atishi, who's going to perhaps be taking oath on the 21st of this month. These changes in Delhi, the Aam Aadmi Party wanting early elections in November, and Kejriwal going back to the people saying that my imandar insan ka iman has been hurt, and that is why he wants to. It's a kind of a resurrection project for Kejriwal. Many would say that he's going back to the people, the street fighter that he is, to reform his image in a way that has taken a hit after this liquor policy case. How do you see this development really? Is this Kejriwal going back to his old form and retreating from the governance of Delhi, or do you see a larger national picture ahead?
You know, the issue of resurrection would be that if he's actually taken a beating. Delhi has been, right from 2013 onwards, it has very neatly presented that the state choice when it comes to the state government, it's the Aam Aadmi Party. When it's the Lok Sabha elections, it's Mr. Modi. So that is continuing. So in 2024 Lok Sabha election, going all 7 to the BJP is not really a surprise, despite the fact that Kejriwal was released and people felt that there would be a lot of sympathy factor. Sympathy factor is there when somebody is being considered for something. Uh, Kejriwal was not being considered for the Prime Minister. So there was a diminished mandate for Mr. Modi. It did not reflect in Delhi. If we actually study the vote margins and others, you will possibly get some idea that yes, even here, there was some kind of a decline within the, vote victory margins and other things. It is possible that you will get it. So I don't see it as a resurrection of, Kejriwal's attempt to resurrect himself. He's not fallen. There is no mandate against him. It would be there. But having said that, let's put it this way: that he definitely has sprung a surprise on the BJP as well as on the other parties in the opposition also, even within his own party. Kejriwal, quite like Mr. Modi, is also known for unilateral decision making. Does not really go through a consultative process within his own party also. So this is something which has been done. I think that Mr. Modi, with the Kejriwal, with this decision of his, has decided to withdraw from state level politics, and now is going to elevate himself, put at the national level. Because if you look at the Supreme Court verdict, even if there are elections, whether they held in November, which is quite unlikely, because despite one nation, one election being championed by the BJP, they are unlikely to hold it along with Jharkhand and Maharashtra, which both are definitely not going very much in favor of of the BJP at the moment. So the party would not want to, Mr. Modi would not want to club all the three elections together. Even if it is held earlier and the Aam Aadmi Party comes back to power, there would be legal limitations on Mr. Kejriwal assuming the chief minister's position. The order which the Supreme Court gave, that you shall not assume charge as the you cannot go to fine, so would continue even in the new assembly, new term. You cannot say that I have taken fresh oath as chief minister, so I am entitled to sign files and function like a 100% functional. The point is that certain issues have been, certain matters were pointed out about the current lieutenant governor being different kind of lieutenant governor, had come with a more precise political mandate from Mr. Modi. He's been a loyalist of Mr. Modi almost from the time that he was the chief minister of Gujarat in 2001. Their ties go back to being Mr. one of the many Mr. Fixers that Mr. Modi has had in Gujarat. So VK Saxena has come to Delhi also and remains essentially to settle things matter politically in favor of the BJP and Mr. Modi. So relations will not be good between the Aam Aadmi Party and the centre and the Lieutenant Governor's office if Mr. Kejriwal is the Lieutenant Governor, is the Chief Minister. But if Atishi continues, and I think, quite likely that if the Aam Aadmi Party gets a majority, she is going to continue as Chief Minister. That definitely opens up avenues of better understanding between her and the Lieutenant Governor and maybe a cordial relations. That is what is required. You cannot continue to have a Lieutenant Governor who does not allow the Chief Minister to do her or his job, and you cannot have the Chief Minister who all the time is trying to act as if he is the lord of the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, not Delhi, which is really hamstrung by the Act of 1993.
But not just VK Saxena, even before that, when Najib Jung was also LG, there were problems for the Aam Aadmi Party government, the constant sparring with the LG and the Aam Aadmi Party government. So it perhaps doesn't really matter who the LG is because they will try to create problems for the Aam Aadmi Party government. But how do you see Kejriwal's move? Do you see it as a pragmatic move by a politician who's looking to change the public's perception in a sense after this corruption taint on him? Or do you see him, as Nilanjan is saying, preparing for a national entry?
What Nilanjan said might as well be true, but I ever since I've covered Aam Aadmi Party, I interact with many of their leaders also. It has always liked to project itself as an ideology-free, more solution-oriented, more what we call technocratic approach towards governance. Okay, we'll give solutions. So this is how it projects itself, and there was a growing perception within this constant context of uh, tussle between the center LG and the government, in which the Delhi government was feeling really pressed for any sort of independence, because the files would just not go through. So the Aam Aadmi Party, given its disposition, it is always it what it is has always been has been constantly is USP is being responsive all the time, kind of give some kind of reaction or response to in situations where it is feeling pressed against the larger forces in power. So I see Kejriwal's move in a context where there was a growing perception in the party that the BJP's campaign, the constant, like consistent campaign to label Aam Aadmi Party as corrupt and at the same time ineffective government, may really take some concrete shape, and there was a growing perception where the people of get they were getting feedbacks where they believed that people were feeling really torn between choosing Aam Aadmi Party and or the center. They actually, because many of us know that the governance has actually collapsed in the last 2 years when so many of their senior leaders have been arrested or jailed, and while the LG has not allowed the Delhi government any sort of leverage. Or so Kejriwal had to come up, given how he is good with repartee. We have known him as a person who's like really good and smart with his opponents in trying to how he responds, and that is one of the primary reasons where BJP has mostly been found wanting when Kejriwal does something. While it has a steady and effective response against the Congress, but Aam Aadmi Party with no baggage it has always struggled to how to kind of, and I feel Kejriwal has stumped the BJP this time, because what was BJP's campaign? That it is the most Kattar Beiman party, constantly by speaking that, by constantly talking about its corruption, it was trying to create a perception that Aam Aadmi Party government was actually the most corrupt, and the Aam Aadmi Party was fearful of that kind of campaign getting like a real concrete shape amongst the electorate. And the second thing was that it led a campaign over the last 6 months that Kejriwal will finally anoint Sunita Kejriwal, his wife, as his successor, and making Aam Aadmi Party as another constituent of those who practice dynasty politics. And Kejriwal has stumped by selecting Atishi, and since the time Atishi has been appointed, the Aam Aadmi Party's social media has only spoken about Atishi's role in restructuring and reforming school education. So it does two things. One, Kejriwal has kind of reinforced again as his general perception of being an honest or honest person, a self-sacrificing Gandhian, and who's always thinking about uh, people. So that's his perception. And Atishi, and it helps him also kind of pivot the whole campaign around allegation of corruption against Aam Aadmi Party towards its original agenda of health and education sector reforms. This is what he has tried to do, and in meanwhile it has also given him chance to reach out to people and this is like really, and BJP has been found struggling again. It has no, all its campaign has, Sunita Narayan was not chosen, Tishi has been chosen, and BJP and now knows that Kejriwal is free now, which will allow him to go back to people, and he is much more effective in a rudderless and leaderless Delhi BJP. So it has to completely re-strategize, and like I said, we were just talking about, Kejriwal has also spoken about that with Haryana or Maharashtra election, Delhi should also have simultaneous elections with them, and has again challenged BJP that if you are committed towards one nation, one election, you can actually club these two elections. Yeah, to make it early elections, which projects a sign of confidence in Kejriwal, and he has actually re-energized the political mood of Delhi, according to me, because people were really feeling kind of hopeless about what is happening. These rains, this constant flooding, people, and BJP was at one level successful in blaming the Aam Aadmi government for all the worries. So Kejriwal has done something which is smart. I don't know whether it will carry through or not.
So we'll have to see how that really plays out in the coming months, and whether elections in Delhi are held in November along with Maharashtra, or in February, which is when it is scheduled, and whether one nation, one election actually becomes some form of a reality in the winter session of Parliament, which is also due in December. Thank you so much, Ajoy and Nilanjan, for joining us on the Wire app, and to your viewers for watching. I'll see you again next week.